Hey everybody, welcome to the special holiday edition of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. I'm going to take all your nutrition questions in timely fashion today. And so if you have them and you haven't already started typing them in, it's going to be first come, first serve today. I'm going to answer as many as I can within the next hour or so. And let's start with what we got. I've accidentally eaten bioengineered food recently. Any suggestions on how to get it out fast? I have SIRS meaning chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and leaky gut. I'm on cholestyramine powder for Dr. Shoemaker protocol. So if you're trying to purge your system, best way to purge your system, in my opinion, is just to do a vitamin C flush, Rosalind, and that's, you can use Detox C, and the way to do that is 2 teaspoons of vitamin C powder mixed in 3 ounces of water every 15 minutes, and that'll just purge out your bowel and flush that stuff out of you as quickly as possible. That's probably one of the quickest and easiest things to do. Vitamin C also has very strong support for inflammation, so it has some natural anti-inflammatory properties that you might also benefit, and healing properties that you might benefit from. But I would also warn you, if you're using cholestyramine in any kind of consistent long-term high doses, even if you're using it for mold, you should know, or somebody should have told you, hopefully your doctor told you, that cholestyramine causes fat-soluble vitamin deficiency. So if you're on it for a heavy period of time, you're going to deplete vitamins A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, and omega-3 fatty acids, all of which are necessary to heal from chronic inflammatory response. So if your doctor's not also supporting you with fat-soluble nutrients away from the use of that powder, you should be. Otherwise, you're going to end up creating a problem. So just be aware of that. How do I treat gluten-related skin rash? So Anne's asking. Look, I'd say don't eat gluten. If you don't want a gluten-related skin rash, don't eat gluten. If you're asking me what can you do as you're discontinuing gluten to help your skin heal and repair and recover better, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there are a lot of different things that you can do. One would be to take a high-quality multivitamin. That's like think of that as one of like the shotgun approaches to just getting a lot of nutrients that are going to be beneficial to helping your skin, support your skin recovery. The other would be an omega-3 fatty acid, high-potency omega-3 fatty acid, to help the oil secretions on your skin. But the best way to get rid of a gluten-related skin rash is to not eat gluten. And you can throw any supplement you want at a skin inflammation, but if the gluten is what's driving the inflammation, nothing's really going to help until you change your diet. So diet change is so important, and so many people are misled, even by their own doctors. I had a client earlier this week whose GI doctor told her she was celiac diagnosis. So she had villus atrophy diagnosed on a biopsy, and she had positive serology, meaning she had positive antibodies to something called tissue transglutaminase. And her GI doctor told her she could eat gluten sometimes, that it wasn't that big a deal. She could eat some on time to time, and she didn't have to worry about it, which I found quite appalling, because if you've got celiac disease and you're being told you can eat gluten from time to time, there's no way you're ever going to heal or repair. So again, if your skin issue is gluten related, you've got to change your diet first and foremost. Results of my vitamin E alpha tocopherol level was high. If you're talking about serum results and serum testing, Mary Ellen, it's, I wouldn't take too much or hold too much heavy weight on a serum test for alpha tocopherol, because you could eat foods that are high in alpha tocopherol. There are a number of plant-based foods, usually foods that have vivid red, yellow, or orange colors are going to have a lot of tocopherols in them, and so you could be driving up your levels with food. Now, if you've got a vitamin E also in your fish oil supplement, depending on the level, usually fish oil supplements, the level of tocopherol in them is, it's marginal. It's more there to prevent the oil from spoiling than it is to be a therapeutic dose of oil. Curious if there's any connection to one's blood type and being gluten sensitive. My dad was diagnosed with ataxia of unknown origin, but I'm aware now of gluten ataxia driven from a genetic marker. So good question, Lisa. Not so much blood type and gluten. The genetic markers associated with gluten ataxia predominantly are your classic HLA-DQ2, HLA-DQ8, and also from the work of Oxford researcher Marios Hadjivassiliou, HLA-DQ1. Don't quote me on this, but I think that study shows that 40% of patients with gluten ataxia had DQ1. And so his thought, this group of researchers' thought, is that doctors should not just look for DQ2 and DQ8, which are celiac genetic markers. They should also consider DQ1 as a potential for what they're calling gluten ataxia, or what some others are calling non-celiac gluten sensitivity. I've seen the same thing clinically correlate over many years, is that people with DQ1 genotypes do have a greater propensity toward neurological damage caused by gluten. I've seen it in a number of cases of epileptic seizure problems as well. I've been gluten-free for 2 years, but still having high TPO antibodies and now hypothyroid. I also have itching, burning skin, thyroid-related, ? Suggestions or any other things to try? I mean, so number one, Tanya, are you gluten-free in the traditional sense, or are you truly gluten-free? And if you don't know what that means, you're probably still eating gluten. Can we put a link up for Tanya? Tanya, what I want you to do is go watch my master class. It's called Glutenology. It's free. Just go watch it. Spend some time watching it, and you're going to find a lot of answers in that class as far as the gluten diet and how to go about doing it. Most people that embark on the gluten-free diet are being misled and are doing it incorrectly enough that it allows for the perpetuation of the continuance or the worsening of autoimmune processes. I've been gluten-free for the past 11 years and grain-free for the past few months. Any suggestions to handle MCAS better with daily anaphylactic episodes? Marlene is asking. Marlena, you need to look for mold in your environment. If you've got mast cell activation, you're probably being exposed to mold. So you need to have mold ruled out immediately. Get with a good doctor who understands mold and get that ruled out, because it's my experience that people that have mast cell issues are typically in mold, especially those that have already changed their diet. Is it the gluten or the glyphosate sprayed on the grain? It's all of the above, Sue. Some people, we're not going to deny that spraying grain with glyphosate's a poison. And there's another lawsuit that was just won on that front where glyphosate, there were three patients that developed lymphomas. And the jury found glyphosate guilty of triggering their cancer. But I'm not going to say it's not the glyphosate, but I'm also going to not say it's not gluten too. I think a lot of people, I get this question almost daily. What about ancient grains? What about einkorn? What about organic grain? What about sprouted grain? If you are gluten sensitive, it doesn't matter what kind of grain, you're going to react to it. Glyphosate, no glyphosate, etc. So the big question to answer is, are you gluten sensitive? There are some people who aren't, potentially, that are reacting to glyphosate. Don't disagree. I think everyone reacts to glyphosate, to be honest with you. I don't think glyphosate's healthy for anyone or anything alive that is trying to consume real food. That being said, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people try to eat organic grain and it makes them sick anyway, and there's no glyphosate. So it's not just glyphosate. Glyphosate's just part of this story. Whole grain, gluten-free, organic is the label I'm starting to see on new products. Also a lot of sunflower oil and things that say gluten-free. Yeah, I mean, you got to watch out for seed oils. They're not healthy as a general rule of thumb. They're very oxidizing, and they can cause damage, inflammatory damage, especially if you're eating them in a lot of products. My husband has Parkinson's. What would be the best vitamin? We are gluten-free. Parkinson's can be tough. So one thing would be, is he grain-free, not just gluten-free? The other thing with Parkinson's that we'll see a lot of is heavy metal contamination, so lead, mercury. if he has old silver fillings or amalgams from dental work, might have those investigated by an environmental dentist who understands mercury toxicity well. CoQ10, as far as like supplementation, just to support somebody with Parkinson's, CoQ10 would be probably number one on the list, combined with benfotiamine, which is a highly absorbable form of vitamin B1. But those two things, 300 milligrams of each would be what I would, if I had Parkinson's, that's what I would take to support myself, like top two. Beyond that, get tested, because there could be some other gaps in his nutrition that you need testing to help identify. There are a lot of different nutrients that can also mimic nutrient deficiencies that can mimic the symptoms of Parkinson's. And so you want to make sure that he doesn't have something that's quite simple as well. I'm confused about taking calcium supplements. Sadly, I'm on an ARB. That's an angiotensin receptor blocker, which causes, by the way, ARBs cause villus atrophy. There are about 18 now reports in the medical literature of ARBs causing damage to the GI tract that is identical to the damage gluten causes. So we call it pseudo-celiac, because these patients are taking blood pressure medicines that actually damage their gut. And then they end up with a celiac diagnosis, and it's not celiac per se, it's their blood pressure medicine destroying their gut. So you might want to talk to your doctor, Linda, about other options beyond ARBs. And then beta blockers. Should you take calcium? I think if you're considering whether or not you should take calcium, get your calcium levels measured, specifically your intracellular calcium measures, because taking calcium at random may not be the right move, but it also may be a good move. It just depends. Everybody's unique in that regard. So testing is always kind of a better way to go about answering those questions. My husband has factor V, which is a genetic predisposition to blood clotting. He's on Xarelto. Could he ever go natural route for a blood thinner? Possibly. You'd have to find a good doctor that understood it to help him in that regard, but there are natural things that thin the blood. Ginkgo biloba is a very good blood thinner as an herb. Fish oil thins the blood, niacin thins the blood, nattokinase, proteolytic enzymes can help with blood viscosity. So there are a lot of things that control the thickness of the blood. What's important to know, though, is that if he's going to try to go a natural route, he needs to work with a doctor, and they need to make sure that they're measuring his clotting factors and other parameters of blood clotting and blood viscosity. So there are a lot of different tests that can be measured. There's what's called prothrombin, PT and PTT. There's something called INR that would need to be monitored. He would also want to probably have his fibrinogen and his D-dimer measured. His C-reactive protein should be measured and monitored. His homocysteine should be measured and monitored. And then you can also ask the doctor to measure something called serum viscosity, which just basically measures the thickness of the blood. And then there's also, when he gets his blood drawn, what does his phlebotomist say? Is his blood super thick? Is it thin? Being on Xarelto, it's probably thin. If he were going a natural route, if it were getting too thick, sometimes a good phlebotomist will pick up on that. So lots of potential there, but again, I wouldn't do anything without good guidance. Diagnosed with celiac and leaky gut and fatty liver. Should I take Toka? Never heard you discuss the supplement. The reason why is because it's maybe not necessary. I'm not saying it can't be helpful, but that particular supplement's not in my bag of essentials. It's not on my list of essentials that people absolutely need to have because of those diagnoses. I would say if you've been diagnosed with celiac, leaky gut, and fatty liver, all of those things are reversible, Robert. And if you haven't worked on reversing them, no amount of Toka in the world is going to be beneficial for you. You've got to reverse those situations, and then you don't need things like Toka. My nose bleeds every now and then. What do you recommend to take? You may not need to take anything. Describe to me what now and then means to you, because now and then to me, once a month, once every 2 months, or you mean now and then once a week, twice a week. Because the frequency is going to matter. There are a lot of different things that could cause an enhanced frequency of nosebleeds, anything from dry air climate changes, humidity levels in the air, to potential for microbes, colonizing your sinus cavities. You can get bacteria and fungus that colonize your sinuses that can cause damage to your membranes and create bleeding. You could have environmental contaminants like mold or other air contaminants you're being exposed to that irritate your mucosal membranes in your nose. So it really just depends. If you want to just take a general supplement to support your sinuses and your airway passages, we have something, Lily, called Ultra Sinus Support that you might find helpful. But, if you're having a pretty relative higher frequency of nosebleeds, I'd get that checked out. Can you explain the gluten-hemoglobin relationship? Will that explain monocytes, eosinophils, MPV, RDW, MCVI? Can, and to a certain extent. So if you have gluten sensitivity and you're eating gluten, one of the most common deficiencies caused by gluten is iron. Now, iron is a mineral, and it's an essential mineral that's necessary to form the protein hemoglobin in your blood, in your red blood cells specifically. And so when your hemoglobin go back down a little bit. Yeah, right there. When your hemoglobin is low in your blood cells, that means your blood cells won't carry oxygen efficiently. That's anemia. It's a type of anemia. Oftentimes it's referred to as a microcytic anemia. When your iron is low, your red blood cells are too small. So what it won't explain is a high MCV. If your MCV is high, the MCV is just a marker for measuring the size of your red blood cell. And typically a high mean corpuscular volume means your red blood cells are, on average, too big. And that is typically caused by B12 or folate deficiencies, which can also be caused by gluten. So there's a gluten correlation there, but it's a different kind of anemia. As far as elevations in monocytes and eosinophils, those are immune cells, and if you have a chronic inflammatory response to gluten, monocytes can be elevated. Eosinophils can be elevated for a lot of reasons. The two most common reasons is an acute allergy to something, and that you could have an acute allergy to wheat or other proteins found in grains. So that, that's not necessarily the same thing as gluten sensitivity, but it might explain it to a certain extent. As far as your platelet volume can go up. There are platelet disorders associated with gluten sensitivity. Red distribution width can go up with gluten sensitivity. Red distribution width is a surrogate marker for iron deficiency, so it's kind of a redundancy. When you have low hemoglobin, you typically will also have high red distribution width. I don't know if I answered all your questions, but if your red blood cell count's low, your hemoglobin's low, and your hematocrit's low, you're probably, all of those things are low because you have iron deficiency, but iron deficiency is one of the things. It could also have to do with vitamin B6. It could also have to do with copper and other nutrients, but iron is the most common. So there's a little mini crash course in blood cells and blood cell morphology and gluten for you, Morgiana. Okay, go back up to that other that I missed. Karen's asking, my husband has one carotid artery and was told to take Lipitor at 81 milligrams, aspirin to get the plaque down. Not a fan of statins, but don't want him to stroke out. Any thoughts? I don't know that there's a single shred of scientific evidence that shows that taking a statin actually reduces a plaque. I challenge anyone watching the show to come back to me and show me one piece of literature where there was a randomized placebo-controlled double-blinded trial where they measured plaque size pre-statin, post-statin against a placebo and found that statins actually reduce plaque size. I think that anybody that would make that claim would be doing so unscientifically. That would be my opinion on it. So I'm not a fan of statins for several other reasons. One being that cholesterol is commonly blamed for plaquing, but cholesterol is not what causes plaquing. Inflammation is what causes plaquing. And if you don't know what's causing the inflammation, it doesn't matter how much you lower the cholesterol. The outcomes for people on statin medications are still heart disease and still stroke. We don't have less stroke and heart disease since we've introduced statins into the general population as a mainstream treatment for cardiovascular diseases. So to me, it wouldn't make sense you know, if you're taking a statin, what you're also doing is blocking CoQ10 and blocking vitamin D and disrupting your husband's testosterone production, and those are not good things. And those things can actually increase the risk for heart disease and other health issues. So you got to weigh the risk and the benefit of whether or not it's something, you know, that he should be doing. What about neuropathy? So I don't know what that means. What about neuropathy? Be more specific, Sue, about what you mean about neuropathy. So there are different kinds of neuropathy and different things that can cause those different kinds of neuropathy. But if you have specific neuropathy that you want me to answer a question about, let me know. I'm 63, having lots of hot flashes and vaginal dryness. What can I do to help with that? Get your hormone levels checked. You know, you may have low estrogen. And there are a number of, and you can also try what are called adaptogens, estrogen adaptogens. These are things like black cohosh and Vitex agnus castus. We have a product called Ultra Women Balance, I think is the name, and it's a blend of estrogen and hormone adaptogens that are sometimes very helpful for that kind of situation. But you could try those. You could also, some women find that if their estrogen's low, especially if they've had hysterectomy where they've had, you know, ovaries or uterus removed, that they're not able or capable of making enough estrogen and progesterone. And so sometimes good biological hormone replacement therapy is not the wrong move. I know a lot of you guys, if you follow me, you kind of know my stance on drugs. It should be the kind of the last thing that you look at doing. But there are situations where they are very much appropriate, and I think, you know, total hysterectomy is one of those potential situations. I just don't know enough historically about you, Lynn, to be able to give you an exactly detailed answer there. I have a torn horn meniscus and still swelling after a year. I can't take anything for pain because I have celiac and it just messes me up. I'm grain-free and sugar-free. One doctor said I need a partial knee replacement. The other specialist said that the other knee is worse, so I don't know what to do. Don't want to do knee surgery. A lot of things there to unpack, really. If you don't necessarily want to take pain medications because pain medications will just suppress the problem. If you've got a torn meniscus, I would suggest glucosamine, chondroitin, and MSM. You should be able to tolerate those really well. That will provide some gag building blocks for your cartilage. The other thing I would strongly encourage you to do is to get enrolled, if you haven't already, into some type of physical therapy program. And you know, you can go to a PT or you can go to a good chiropractor that specializes in extremities like the knees and get a good program designed for you. The other thing you might consider, there's some modality therapies that can be very effective for getting that inflammation under control and getting you some improvement. And one would be infrared therapy that can deeply penetrate into the tissue. So good, powerful infrared. You might also consider low-level laser as an option, and cryotherapy. And I'm talking about cryo chambers, not ice packs, but intense cryotherapy can sometimes be the thing that stops the inflammation long enough to allow the body to kick in past the inflammation mode into a healing mode. The other thing you should consider is getting your nutritional status measured, because you might be deficient in copper or zinc or vitamin C, in which case you'll never heal. If you don't have adequate nutrition going into that area, you know, it's just not going to heal if you don't have adequate minerals for it to heal. So getting mineral and nutrient tested might be very helpful. Again, if you aren't familiar, you know, Gluten-Free Society, if your doctor doesn't measure it, Gluten-Free Society offers intracellular nutritional testing. I can put a link of that up for you. And right now, those tests are 20% off. Like this, you guys that are attending tonight get kind of early access to our Thanksgiving sale here. If you use promo code THX 2023, when you get there, you'll save 20% on any laboratory test, but also on any kind of supplementation that Gluten-Free Society offers. So, but nutrition, checking that nutrition is going to be super important, because you want to know whether or not it's going to heal, but you got to have the building blocks to heal it. Dr. O, you said you can smell mold in people's clothing. Does that mean you can literally smell it, or that you get symptoms from their clothing? Both. I can smell it and I can get symptoms. So both. Unfortunately, God has granted me the gift of being a mold cop wherever I go after putting me through mold. Can I do the nutritional test? I'm in Canada. Yes, you can. Reach out to our customer service department. That's glutenology@gmail.com, and they can get you a test kit over the border. Let's see here. Can celiacs have arrowroot flour? Yes. Arrowroot is gluten-free. Just make sure that the arrowroot you're buying is certified gluten-free because a lot of flours are processed on the same equipment, so you can get cross-contamination issues. You know, that even though there's not supposed to be gluten in it, if it's cross-contaminated, you could get exposure, and that wouldn't be good. So just buy certified. Laurie says, anything to do for Sjogren's or Raynaud's? Yeah, you need to be, if you're not already on a gluten grain-free diet, that would be a good start. Follow the no grain, no pain diet protocol. Beyond that, if you're still struggling, it's testing. You've got to get accuracy on it, because those both are autoimmune conditions. And autoimmune conditions, Laurie, have 4 primary driving triggers. Food can be a trigger, chemical exposures, microbial imbalances, and nutritional deficiencies are the primary categorical triggers of autoimmunity. So having those things measured, if you've already changed your diet, you need to get those things measured. Is there a problem with teff flour? Yeah, it's got gluten in it. We have an article on teff, I think. We may be able to post for Catherine. Natural way to increase LDL protein size. You want to increase the size of your cholesterol. I mean, 2 things that have been studied pretty well, Catherine, that can be effective there. One is niacin, which is vitamin B3, and the other is omega-3 fatty acids. And as far as that's concerned, if you're going to be anywhere close to effective at all, niacin, anywhere from 1 to 300 milligrams a day or higher in some cases. And then as far as omega-3s are concerned, you need to start your supplementation at 2 grams. But that omega-3 needs to be a good combination of EPA, DHA, and not 2 grams as in, you know, a 1 gram capsule only contains 300 grams of omega-3. That 1 gram capsule should be 90% omega-3. A lot of these companies use a big capsule to make you feel like you're getting more, but the dose of omega-3 they put in their capsules is like 1/3 of anything that's going to be effective. So if you're looking for a good quality brand that's gluten-free, you can check out Ultra Omega. It's what I use in my practice and have used for years. I'm gluten intolerant for years, possibly celiac. Why can't I eat carbs like potatoes or plantains? Any kind of carb makes me tired, causes joint pain and burning skin on my upper arms. You probably have a yeast overgrowth, Angel. Yeast overgrowth, very common for people when they develop carbohydrate intolerance, because yeast thrive on carbs. When you have a yeast overgrowth in your GI tract and you eat those types of foods, the yeast in your gut will actually ferment the carbohydrates and turn it into alcohol, and then that can cause systemic inflammation and problems everywhere, including joint pain, and it can damage the liver. And you know, when your liver's overwhelmed, what happens is manifestation of problems start showing up in your skin. So you know, that's a possibility. That would be what I would suggest you talk to your doctor about. Do you see anything wrong with a smoked turkey? My husband just bought a turkey from Costco, and I'm not sure if that's good. You know, more than worrying about, I mean, it depends. What kind of smoke is it? Is it real smoke? Is it like real wood that they use to smoke it? Or is it like liquid smoke or some kind of smoke derivative or some kind of chemical that they burned to create smoke to smoke it? So that would be part of it. The other part of it would be, Would they feed that turkey? Is that an organic turkey? If they fed it grain, was it an organic grain? Was that a free-range turkey? So those are just things to consider. Should I stop supplementing with methylcobalamin and methylfolate so my MD can see the true effects on my body? If I don't, I'm always tired and she can't figure out why. Should I see a FMP instead? Maybe. And if you're always tired and you can't figure out why, if taking methylcobalamin and methylfolate are helpful and you're not tired when you take those two supplements, and then the second you stop taking them, your fatigue comes back, then it's not a dumb thing to do, to just kind of run a simple test at home to see, how much those nutrients are affecting you. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be tired all the time. And if your doc is not figuring it out and is out of ideas, you got to go back to, in my opinion, a functional practitioner who understands how to do the right kinds of tests to help evaluate you from a root cause perspective versus just how can you take supplements to offset some of your fatigue but still struggle. That's not a good place to be. What's a safe brand of turkey to buy? Dietzel, I think. I can't remember how that's spelled. Last I checked, that was a pretty good brand that you could get at like a local Whole Foods type store. We grow our own turkeys, so I haven't bought one in years because we just grow our own. But we used to use Dietzel, so you can check out that brand, and if they're still quality and still good, go for it. Which other medical professors advocate your therapies? Lots of them. You can look up FMU or IFM. Those are organizations with 20,000 medical professionals that advocate very, very similar approaches to healthcare. Is almond flour and tapioca flour better for diabetics? Not really. Almond maybe, but tapioca is pretty high glycemic. So if you're trying to control your blood sugar, tapioca flour would probably be a sugar bomb for you. As far as coconut sugar, is that better? Might be a little bit better than sugar, but it's still sugar, and it's still going to create a blood sugar effect in people. A lot of people think coconut sugar's magically healthy, but it's still sugar. So you still have to be careful with it. And again, some people react. I've seen people reacting more to coconut sugar than to other types sometimes, even though that's not what it's marketed as. So it's unique to the person. Are potato chips with olive oil or avocado oil acceptable on a gluten-free diet? Yeah, they are if they're gluten-free, if they're not contaminated with something else, Marge. But they're gluten-free, but the question ultimately is, are they healthy? Potato chips are not good for us. And, I don't care how they package them or how they, spruce up the package to say this, is natural and cooked safer. And there's just so many marketing tactics with chips. But chips at the end of the day are junk food. And I'm not telling you never eat a potato chip again. I'm just simply saying don't walk away from this show under the guise that somehow eating potato chips on a regular basis is healthy because they're gluten-free. There are a lot of things that are gluten-free that aren't good for us. And so the key element is if you're trying to restore health, you want to restore health. And that means, if you're gluten sensitive, it means being gluten-free, but it also means being gluten-free in a healthy way. Again, I'm not trying to take away everybody's potato chips for the end of time, but you also have to be realistic with yourselves and be honest with yourselves. Potato chips aren't good for you, no matter how you cook them, no matter how you slice them, no matter what oils you're using. You're high heating a carbohydrate, creating acrylamide, which is a carcinogen, and then most people eat a half a bag before they realize they need to cut it back. So it's an addictive food that isn't really good for you. But yes, it is gluten-free. What can cause keratosis pilaris? I have a couple spots and I'm grain-free, but I got another one on my back. Lots of things, mostly, in my experience, mostly nutritional deficiencies, omega-3, vitamin C. I've seen zinc and vitamin A contribute to that as well. Is pumpkin pie healthier than apple pie? I think it depends on the ingredients you're using to make it. I mean, apple pie, a lot of people throw down a lot of sugar in those. The same thing with pumpkin pie. Are you using an alternative type of sweetener, something like honey or maple, or even something like a xylitol, a birchwood xylitol? I think it just depends on the other ingredients that you're using. I think pumpkins are good for you, and apples are relatively good for you, but it's what you put in the pie mix that can take you down the dark road. Coffee and gluten connection. Can you explain that? So coffee and gluten, there's not really a connection per se. Coffee is gluten-free unless it's cross-contaminated. Some coffees are, the instant coffees, the ones with the powderized coffee that you just stir right in with hot water. A lot of those contain barley, and so they can be contaminated with gluten. So you have to read your label very carefully. And there's one study that was done, I think it was Aristio Vijani and his group that did it, that found that there was the potential for some molecular mimicry of coffee and gluten, meaning that for some people, coffee reacted to their immune systems very similar to the way that gluten does. But as it goes, coffee is relatively gluten-free. I have a more in-depth video on that, Maria. We have a video on coffee somewhere in our YouTube channel if you want to pull that up for Maria. My son contracted C. diff as an infant, then he regressed into autism at 2.5. His neurotransmitters are a mess. Can the ratio of HVA to VMA possible to be balanced? Yeah, but it may not be C. diff. There's a lot of factors with autism. There's a lot of factors, and I'm not saying that you're wrong and that C. diff wasn't what happened that caused his regression, but I would just say that if he's over the C. diff at this point, then there probably are other variables if he's still symptomatic. And so I don't know what kind of diet you have your son on, but casein, gluten-free, grain-free diets can be very helpful for kids with autism. Autistic kids are also, a lot of times they have heavy metal contamination. I see a lot of these kids with mercury and cadmium and lead toxicity issues. And so you might want to look at, have his doctor measure those things. Neurotransmitters are an upstream product, so although they can be measured, when they're imbalanced, generally that imbalance is caused by either environmental triggers creating the imbalance or nutritional deficits contributing to the imbalance. So if you haven't had his micronutrient tests measured, it'd be a good idea to do that. Do you recommend vitamin C reduction if you're dealing with oxalate poisoning? Yeah, for a lot of people, if you're struggling with an oxalate issue, higher doses of vitamin C, you might consider not doing that, especially if you're very symptomatic. Any advice on getting other family members on board with diet changes you're trying to make? I have adult kids that aren't exactly helpful so far. Not really. My mom's not gluten-free. Last I checked, I don't think any of my siblings. Maybe one of them is gluten-free. I think my oldest sister is gluten-free. But my other siblings, none of them are really gluten-free, and they should all be. I mean, their healths all, to some degree, struggle in certain ways. And look, I know more about gluten, arguably, than most people in the world. And if I can't convince my own family, good luck convincing yours. I think the issue with family is they're not coming to family members. Family doesn't go to other family members for health advice or medical advice. So a lot of times when you have suggestions or helpful guidance, they're just not willing to do it. There's a psychology there that I have known to be true for a very long time, which is a person has to be sicker than their fear, like their pain level. And when I say pain, it's not always even physical pain. It's just the pain of the illness that they're experiencing. So the pain and the discomfort and the dysfunction in their life has to be greater than their fear of change. Because that's what, when you're asking them to change their diet, you're asking them to give up all their modern conveniences. And that's a big ask. So the psychology has to be right. The timing has to be right. So the thing I'd like to do is I like to work on myself and be the beacon, be the shining example for people to emulate and show people that you can be healthy doing it this way, so that when they are ready, you've planted the seed for them to be able to come to you. But you're not going to convince somebody who's skeptical, about making diet changes. In my practice, the rule of my practice is I don't advertise. And the reason why I don't advertise is I never want to run into clientele that I have to convince that they're doing the right thing. Like, to me, that's already a bad relationship. If you're already not convinced that you're in the right place to look at your nutrition as the sole most important underlying factor in your health, then you're in the wrong office. That's kind of the way I look at things. So this is not just true of me in my practice, but it's true of you in your relationships. If people aren't willing to recognize nutrition as important, you're generally not going to convince them. So follow-up question on the ataxia, is that HLA-DQ-A1? I have ataxia from time to time. Yes, that's HLA-DQ alpha 1 as a genetic marker. Does Ozympia have bad side? You mean Ozempic? My sister's taking along with 3 drugs for high blood pressure. Mark, make sure you spelt that drug right. I want to make sure, because there's different drugs with similar spellings and similar. So I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. But if it's Ozempic, does it have side effects? Yeah, it does. There isn't a drug that doesn't have long-term side effects. They all come at a cost. Generally, the cost is a reduction of your symptoms at the cost of your longevity health and the quality of your life health, right? So that's what you're paying. When you pay that drug cost and it's cheaper because your copay or your insurance picks it up, what's really paying the price is your body, the capacity for your body to maintain its longevity and its quality of life over time, because all drugs have a nutritional cost. Do we need to stop taking supplements before we do intracellular nutrient testing? No, you don't. You can continue to take what you've been taking. It won't affect the test. Is there corn glucose in the IV used for upper and lower GI? My doc wants to do. You have to ask them. I mean, there are different products available. Different doctors order from different carriers, and so you have to find out. Please give us your opinion on autophagy. Does it work? Well, it's not that autophagy does or doesn't work. Autophagy is a process, and it's a process of cellular cleaning and cellular healing. So that process, yes, it works. If you're asking me whether or not fasting is helpful to induce autophagy, the answer is yes, fasting does help. Now, is that going to work for everybody to reverse all of their ailments and problems? No, but it is a mechanism or a tool that you can do that doesn't cost you any money, fasting that is, that can induce autophagy and help accelerate and expedite the healing process. So it is a valid tool to use when you're trying to recover. Best supplements for tendon healing. You need enough protein. You got to make sure you're getting enough protein, and one type of protein you really want to consider is collagen. Tendons are predominant collagen, so you want a good, strong version of collagen. We have a product called Ultra Collagen, which contains the type of collagen necessary for tendons to repair. Beyond that, there are a lot of things that are needed for the production of healing, and that vitamin C can be something that's critical. Copper is something that's critical for tendon repair. Other minerals as well. I mean, the array of minerals, everything from calcium down to zinc, all are important. A big part of it is what are you low in, because you can take certain things, but at the end of the day, if you're taking things you're not low in and the things you're low in are preventing your healing, then you're still not going to heal. So, but I would start with a good collagen supplement and probably just if you're trying to kill as many birds with one stone, a good solid multivitamin with a good solid omega-3 2-gram dose on the omega-3 as a great place to start. And then beyond that, it just based on the individual. A lot of people, though, with chronic tendinopathy won't heal because they're not getting enough protein in their diet, and especially true with all the rhetoric about, anti-meat and plants or animals destroying the planet, with global warming and all that other nonsense. So people have gravitated away from protein out of fear that either they're destroying the planet or that they're going to contribute to their own cancers. But protein's very critical for healing, and this is true even of people who do really well on plant-based diets. I'm not opposed to plant-based diets, but when you're injured, your need for protein increases above and beyond what a plant-based diet might be capable of providing. So in those cases, sometimes those are unique situations where you need to get more than what a typical diet might provide. So like to heal a chronic injury, sometimes we got to get people on 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight to expedite that healing. And a lot of diets, they're eating like 0.8, 0.6 grams of protein per kilogram, and it's just nowhere enough to accelerate or aid in the healing process. Turner syndrome, and I don't want to put a stent in my vein. Any supplement that can help with blood circulation? There's a lot of them. I mean, probably the best one that's essential that your body needs and you have to have it to function is omega-3. It's fantastic for supporting healthy circulation. So I'd start there with anywhere between 2 and 3 grams is a good place. How would you explain intestinal metaplasia biopsy results after? I would say that there's something that you're doing or putting into your intestines that's creating damage to the cells that are leading to metaplastic changes in them, and there's a number of things that can do that. Food sensitivities can do that. Gluten can certainly contribute to metaplastic changes in the intestine. Glyphosate can contribute to metaplastic changes in the intestine. Folate deficiency, vitamin B12 deficiency. So there are a lot of potentials there that could trigger that. Is it possible to get iron overload from red meat? Not typically, no. Some people can get their iron levels a little bit higher, but those individuals a lot of times have genetic predisposition, and they have something called hemochromatosis. And so it's a lot easier for them to become iron toxic as a result of overconsumption, but it's not real typical. Nosebleeds every couple of weeks, sometimes more or less. So if it's every couple of weeks, it's probably something environmental. That's just going back to the nosebleed question. And so if you don't already have some good air filtration in place at home, you might consider that as a start. What's the best test for pernicious anemia? So if you're trying to diagnose or get a diagnosis for pernicious anemia, there are tests that can measure antibodies to intrinsic factor, and there are also tests that can measure antibodies to parietal cells. So parietal cells are specialized cells in your stomach that make intrinsic factor. You can have an immune reaction against those cells. You can also have an immune reaction against intrinsic factor. So having your doctor measure the 2 antibodies against those 2 tissues can help you get a diagnosis or understand whether or not pernicious anemia is something you've got. What are some cheap and easy ways to stay healthy? Sunshine every day, go to bed on time, sleep 8 hours, get exercise on the regular that is not too much exercise, but it's the right amount for you and your tolerance. Eat only real foods, not processed or not packaged. Avoid toxic relationships. I mean, these are all low-hanging fruit things that don't cost you any more money than what you're currently doing that can make major, major impacts in your health. Beyond that, drink clean water and breathe clean air. So air filtration, water filtration, those are relatively cheap when you can factor them out over time. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Katie. My doctor thinks I have vestibular, or I think you may have misspelled this. Vertibular is not the right word, but vestibular artery stenosis may be what you mean. I have more tests upcoming. Are there any supplements that can help the dizziness? Now, get a diagnosis first, because he thinks you may have it, but your tests aren't back. So, if you don't have stenosis, arterial stenosis in the vestibular chain, then those supplements aren't going to do much for you. So anything I tell you might not be helpful. So come back next week after your tests come back, Danny, and ask that question again, and I'll answer it. So commentary on intestinal metaplasia. In the stomach, I meant to say instead of the intestine. All the things I said about the intestines are also true of the stomach. We could add one more though, Olga. We could also add, there's a bacteria that many people develop in the stomach overgrowth. It's called Helicobacter pylori, and so you can ask your doctor to measure for that bacteria because there are treatments for that bacteria. Tips to overcome sugar and grain addiction. I get overwhelmed especially when hungry. Well, number one, if you have it in your house, throw it all away, get rid of it, give it to the church, give it to a friend. Actually, if it's a friend, you wouldn't want to give garbage to the friend, but get rid of it, get it out of your house, because when you're overwhelmed and stressed and you're at home, if it's not in your house, you're not going to eat it. And hopefully your addiction is not so great that you're going to get in the car and drive all the way to the store, to poison yourself. But keep it out of your house first and foremost. Don't tempt yourself. Alcoholics don't keep a liquor cabinet at home because they would be unsuccessful. And so when you're talking about sugar addiction and grain addiction, you treat it like it's an addiction in that same way. You don't expose yourself. You don't hang out with people at the bar if you're an alcoholic. And so in the same way, you wouldn't want to go hang out with your friends at a donut shop or a coffee shop that sells donuts. So you've got to control your environment until you overcome the addiction and you trust yourself enough to be left with it. Now there are certain supplements that you can take that oftentimes can help with this. Chromium can help reduce sugar cravings. Zinc can help reduce sugar cravings. Vitamin C and niacin can sometimes be very helpful with those cravings as well. So you might attempt doing those and seeing if they're also helpful. Is there a supplement that can help with LATA? I'm 107 pound, 5'2". I eat gluten-free, sugar-free, low carb. Now, if you're talking about diabetes, vanadium, chromium, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D can all be helpful because they all play a role in the blood sugar regulatory chain. If you tune in next Tuesday, Tamara, I'm doing an entire show on blood sugar control that you might find to be very, very helpful in this regard. So I'd encourage you to tune in next week. Can celiacs have, I think I answered that. Have you ever heard of hereditary fructose intolerance or aldolase B deficiency? I have, but I've never seen a case of true hereditary fructose intolerance. I've seen a lot of people with fructose intolerance, but not necessarily genetically. And I've seen a lot of genetic disorders where people were told they had genetic problems, and when we fixed their diet, the level of genetic influence tremendously reduced. So I'm very hesitant to blame genetics, even if you have a hereditary diagnosis. I can eat butter and milk, but heavy cream destroys my gut. Why are they different? There are a lot of different reasons. You may be reactive to the heavy cream because of the high fat content, and so you could have a gallbladder or liver problem, which doesn't allow you to process quite so much fat. I mean, that's the thing that stands out as probably the lowest or easiest thing to look at first. Is it true that hot baths lower male fertility? Heard this on the Huberman podcast. Hot baths don't lower male fertility in the long run. They can acutely reduce sperm counts. It's like a man who's trying to have a child with his wife, and he takes a hot bath before having sex. That is going to reduce his sperm counts and motility, and so won't be good. But generally speaking, a hot bath doesn't lower his fertility indefinitely. So you have to. I don't know what the context of that statement was without having heard it, but that would be more along the right lines of thought. What's wrong with buckwheat? Buckwheat has proteins that are similar to gluten, and what we see clinically is a lot of people cross-react to buckwheat. We also see a lot of buckwheat products that are cross-contaminated with enough gluten to cause damage, and so even though technically they're not the same thing, and technically they are gluten-free, the molecular mimicry for buckwheat is very high. That's also true of amaranth and quinoa, the three pseudograins. My dad was in the hospital from E. coli, septicemia, took so many antibiotics. What supplements should he take? I mean, the top of the line should be on a high-dose probiotic, because if he was on all those antibiotics, he wanted to try to support his microbiome as best as possible coming out of that situation. If you want to use a heavy hitter, Nancy, we have something called ultrabiotic defense that he could use that would be very supportive in that regard. What do you think about collagen supplements, helpful or not? I think it depends. I think they can be very helpful. Collagen protein supplements can be very helpful depending on the person and depending on what you're trying to take it for. So another question Glenn's asking about the nutrition testing for Canadians. We do drop ship to Canada, Glenn, but there's some logistics things that our team would want to give you clarity on. I don't even know all the details, but if you reach out to Gluten Free Society, we put the phone number up. Just you can call and ask to talk to Jessica or Malaya, and they can give you great clarity so that you're clear on what can be done. Do you do consultations? I do. You can reach out to my office and set something like that up if that's something you want to do. I'm dealing with a lot of histamine intolerance symptoms. Is taking antihistamines a bad strategy? Does it help or harm? It's not a bad strategy if it improves your quality of life, but it's a bad long-term strategy because antihistamines lower your stomach acid production and suppress your immune system. Antihistamines are also suppressive of brain function over time, and so there are linkages now to long-term antihistamine use in early onset dementias. So it's not a great long-term strategy. It's really, in my opinion, it can be a quality of life short-term strategy, but you got to figure out why you're having histamine issues, and that's where the magic happens, is figuring out the why. A lot of foods can be histamine drivers. There are foods that contain histamines, but then there are also food allergies that can drive the release of histamines. There's environmental mold, which is a common cause of excess or elevations in histamine. And, of course, there are a variety of other bugs and things that can happen in your intestines that can disrupt your body's ability to break down histamine. There's an enzyme called DAO, diamine oxidase, that breaks histamine down. And so, another strategy you might consider that's more safe, Susan, is using DAO as a support supplement to help your body better break histamine down. Some people find really good relief using DAO as a supplement in that way, and they're able to find themselves not having to use as much antihistamine. And so you can just look DAO up. There are a number of companies that sell it. My Gluten Free Society does not. We don't have a DAO product, but we do have a product called Hist Assist, which is a mixture of botanicals, vitamin C, and lysine, which help to stabilize mast cells. Mast cells are the white blood cells that release histamine. So when you stabilize the membrane around mast cells, you can actually have some improvement along that line. So that might also be a strategy that you try as well. What are some new supplements that I'm excited about? Jury's out. I'd say probably one that I'm looking at more and running experiments on now is some of the new vitamin B3 agents like NMN. I think that they're hyped. That is my initial opinion of them. A lot of times companies will come out with new supplements and it's like all the hype in the world. You saw that like here just recently, there's a company that makes a product called Akkermansia, which is a type of intestinal bacteria that they have patented, and I'm not all that impressed. I think it's way overrated and way overblown. They sell a lot of supplements, but clinically speaking, I'm not impressed by a lot of the new things that come out. They have to stand the test of time. So the things that I'm the most excited about, honestly, are the essentials. and that's where I'll probably stay. The essentials, the B vitamins, the non-B vitamins like vitamin C and vitamin D and A and E and K. The other things I'm excited about are minerals, right? The essentials, the things that we know your body cannot function without, that it absolutely has to have, are the most exciting things, because fundamentals never change. And you can get, exciting packages and wrappers, and you can get exciting products that are coming out where a lot of claims get made. But most of these newer products that are coming out, a lot of the claims are made solely on animal studies, and they haven't really been tested, tried and true in a clinic yet. So that's not to say there isn't merit to new things and new technologies coming out, but I'm just not excited about any one thing in particular right now. And NMN is probably, again, the one that has the most merit or potential. I'm positive for autoimmune disease. My rheumatologist diagnosed me with mixed connective tissue disease. What are some natural supplements I can take? Is it reversible? Quinny, you need to go on a no grain, no pain diet. If you don't know what that is, go to Amazon and get you a copy of the book and read it. There's phase 1 and phase 2 of the diet. Start it. I actually wrote the book based on my experience working in the rheumatology department at the VA hospital, seeing the tragedy that is called medical treatment for autoimmune disease. None of it really ever worked in long terms, and diet change was the only ever meaningful thing that I ever saw reverse autoimmune problems of a rheumatological nature. So start with that. If people were to correct their known vitamin and mineral deficiencies, is it realistic to think they could eat normally with or without being gluten-free again? I don't know what you mean by eat normally. I think eat normally is a term we could debate what that means. I mean, society thinks that eating gluten-loaded pizza with processed cheese loaded with hormones and pepperonis, smattered with nitrates and chemicals is healthy. So if that's what you mean by eating normally, then I think we would have to argue about definitions. But so I'm not quite sure what you mean by your comment. But if you want to clarify, I'm happy to give you commentary. Have a tingling hand, hard circulation sensation in my legs, a tingling hard circulation sensation in my legs, and heart palpitations after eating or drinking. Could this be a vitamin or mineral deficiency? Could be, but it could also be a food toxicity or a food reaction that you're having, because if it's happening after you eat, I would imagine there may be something in the food that you're eating that's triggering it. So, Sherry, you might consider food sensitivity testing as a tool to help you figure that piece out. What's the cause when your eyes feel like you have sand in them? There's an autoimmune condition called Sjogren's that oftentimes creates that type of symptom. There's also a condition called hyperoxalatemia, which is where you have high levels of oxalates, and those crystals can sometimes come out in the fluids in your eyes, creating like a sand or grainy feel. So those would be two, well, I'd say more common things. Is being cold all the time a symptom of a gluten allergy? I mean, there's a lot of things that can cause a person to be cold all the time. The list is very, very long. I mean, gluten sensitivity could certainly be one of them. Gluten can impact the thyroid, so it can cause low thyroid. And that, when the thyroid is misfunctioning and low functioning, people do develop heat or cold intolerances. And so again, it's a possibility, but there's a lot of things there that could be. My intracellular nutrient analysis had 4 nutrient borderline deficiencies, but the rest were okay. I'm spending a lot on supplements and was hoping to cut back on something. What do you recommend? So that would probably be a more one-on-one type question, but I'd recommend starting with, if you're not low in it, stop taking it if you don't want to, continue the cost of something that's not necessarily needed. Save your money on the cost. How do you get rid of yeast overgrowth? There are a lot of strategies, Alan. Probably one of the best strategies is just starve them. Yeast thrive on heavy carbohydrate diets. That's how you make them strong. So starve them. That's one way to get rid of them. The other is to create competition for their growth. Yeast, what competes against yeast directly is a special type of yeast called Saccharomyces boulardii. So it can help with that. They have competition with each other. And so they compete for the same resources, and so it can suppress candida overgrowth. You might also try, there are certain antifungal herbals that can be effective and helpful. One is called caprylic acid. We have a formula called Yeast Shield as well that can be helpful. But diet change, in my experience, you can take all the supplements in the world, but if you don't change your diet, you're not going to kill what you're feeding every day. The test that evaluates omega-3/6 ratio is called an omega check. And that's a test that your doctor can order. It's, that test is done by Cleveland Clinic, and LabCorp contracts with them. And I believe Quest also contracts with them. So it's a test that you can ask your doctor to run, and insurance can cover it. Do you have a supplement store? Yeah, we do. If you're not familiar with our supplement store, just go to glutenfreesociety.org and hit the shop tab. We have over 100 products that we carry online, and that's a good way to wrap up. So I mean, that's how some people say, how can we support you? Well, you can support us in a lot of different ways. You can use our product line. I mean, it's what sponsors our show, so it's what affords for me to be able to have 11 staff members, to have the technology and bring the information that I bring to you guys week after week. So you supporting us by shopping on our store, we greatly appreciate that. And if you use today I think it's through Monday, the coupon code, we have it pinned here. The coupon code is THX2023. You can save 20% off right now. The other ways you can support us, look, our mission is to save 100 million lives. And the only way we're going to do that is reach the people that need this information. And so sharing this information with someone you love and care about is helping us. It's supporting us. Using the hashtag Save 100 Million Lives is also helpful, because that's what we're trying to do. And then also make sure you hit that like button. Hit that like below, and if you're not already subscribed, subscribe. The other way you can subscribe is you can come to Gluten Free Society and you can subscribe to our newsletter there, and that will prevent you from missing out on any of the information that we create for you, because right now we live in a high censorship world where I never know when we're going to be censored. Right now we're not being censored, and that's great, but that could change next week. So the best way to not be censored, or for you not to miss a beat on the information we provide, is to be on our newsletter, because our newsletter is not controlled by big tech. So that being the case, we have a gift for you tonight. For those of you who tuned in Thanksgiving week with us, that gift is, we'll put a link up to it. It's a holiday cookbook, and it's a recipe book full of great holiday ideas that are grain-free, that if you're looking for ideas for Thanksgiving and or Christmas, we've got this free cookbook for you. We'll put that link up below this feed, and you can go check that out at your leisure. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you and your families have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday. I won't be here on Thursday, obviously the holiday, but next Tuesday we're doing a massive crash course on how to control your blood sugar without drugs. It's a show you don't want to miss. We'll see you next week. Take care.